In the aftermath of Tucker Carlson's interview, in regards towards calling out and having a fantastic interview about how Zionist Christians are hypocrites, especially supporting Israel. Many people within the conservative circles, especially those Republican lawmakers that are owned, bought off, that have an association with AIPAC and Israel, recently got triggered and had a little meltdown. They started acting like little snowflakes. Everybody. Republican senators, Republican House representatives, Republican commentators, those that still refuse to acknowledge the war crimes that are happening in Gaza. Those that still refuse to acknowledge the fact that Netanyahu is going to continue on with his military operations despite the pressure that we are seeing from the Biden administration. And if you want to call that pressure, that's a joke, because Netanyahu has been ignoring every single world leader, every single international institution since October 7th. And he has been deliberately, the IDF has been deliberately, on purpose, purposely targeting civilian locations such as residential homes, colleges, community centers, refugee centers, hospitals. You name it. They've been targeting it. So Tucker Carlson having this interview, and myself and Keaton from Due Dissidence, we had this very detailed conversation in regards towards this interview that Tucker Carlson did. And I, for one, hope that it does expand people's minds and make them really question this quote unquote alliance that we do have, and the fact that Israel is getting these billions upon billions of dollars of aid from us. So let's just play a small snippet from that interview, the one that really seemed to have triggered the snowflake, Dan Crenshaw. That's right. That's right. Dan Crenshaw is just really triggered. He's upset. He's crying. He's crying about it because he's just so triggered. So let's first play this video. Shout out again to Tucker Carlson. I encourage everyone to check out the interview in its full entirety. Let's play it.
If you wake up in the morning and decide that your Christian faith requires you to support a foreign government blowing up churches and killing Christians, I think you've lost the thread. Just to end on this, if you had a message for Christian leaders in the United States, whether in government or in churches or just citizens who care about the religion and their fellow Christians, what would it be?
It would be to remind them that when the state of Israel was created, it was not created on an empty land. It was created on a land that had millions of indigenous Palestinians there, including Palestinian Christians. And that state they support, that state they celebrated as a fulfillment of prophecy and a sign of God's state to the Jewish people. For it to become a state, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, including Palestinian Christians, were forced to leave and have never returned. Churches were closed. A friend of mine did a research and counted more than 30 churches that were closed when Israel was created because Palestinians were expelled from the land. Our numbers continue to be in decline. So we're pleading that come and listen, come and talk to us. And my message to Christian leaders right now is there is a very, very brutal war taking place in Gaza, a war that I described using the word genocide, because it's a war that has used even starvation as a mean. And fellow Christians are suffering because of that war. It's time that Christian leaders recognize that wars is not the way, whether in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya. When will we learn that war does not help? When will we take Jesus's words seriously about being peacemakers, about being merciful? There must be other ways. And so it would be an invitation to listen, to learn more, and to avoid very shallow and simplistic perspectives that are not based on scripture itself, but more based on political equations. And I would plead right now, and I will continue to plead that we need to stop this war in Gaza. It's killing many, many children, women, innocent lives. It has to stop. There must be other ways. And as a follower of Christ, we have to pursue the path of peace and justice, and we have to avoid simplistic polarizations, good and evil. Come and listen, come and understand what's happening. And I plead as a Christian pastor from Bethlehem, I plead that you come and listen.
Father, thank you for your thoroughly decent and sensible analysis, and I hope it's heard by Christians throughout the West. I appreciate it.
All right. So after hearing that video, and I didn't want to pause it because I think, pretty much he was saying things that, really should resonate, especially with those that had this connection with Israel, assuming that Israel's the good guy, right? Well, this isn't Saturday morning cartoon logic. People are dying. Men, women, and children in Gaza are dying. They're dying of starvation. They're dying of getting blown up. They're dying by being popped by Israeli soldiers. And we've seen the deplorable, yes, deplorable and horrific videos on social media of Israeli soldiers dancing in abandoned homes, laughing at dead bodies. Hell, you got them even going on social media threatening to kill more people from Palestine. And Dan Crenshaw is one of those triggered snowflakes who just can't see past the madness. He's someone, no pun intended, who is blind to it. Blind in both eyes. Because apparently, this is what the little snowflake said. Representative Dan Crenshaw. This is who Tucker is, a click chaser. Tucker's MO is simple. Defend America's enemies and attack America's allies. When has Tucker defended America's enemies? There's a lot of things I disagree with Tucker Carlson, but that man has a vision of America, all right? He might have a different perspective and points of view, but I've never seen him defend our enemies. I've seen him have a sit-down interview with Putin, right? But see, I've seen other journalists and reporters across the political spectrum in corporate media, which, again, corporate media really doesn't have a spectrum. They're all click, copy, paste the same because they're all robots. But I've seen those people in corporate media sit down and interview dictators and tyrants, including Putin himself. How did he defend Putin? Because what, we don't have dialogue and maybe we don't have World War III? I don't know. He goes on to say, this is what Representative Dan Crenshaw says, there isn't an objective bone left in that washed up news host body. Well, why does he have the most popular platform on X? Why is it that Fox News suffered a huge ratings blow when he left? Tucker took his millions upon millions upon millions of viewers with him as soon as he left Fox News. Mindless contrarianism is his guiding principle, buttressed up by his childish tactic of just ask questions. Well, it seems to me, Mr. Dan Crenshaw, that you're a little perturbed, that maybe you got some sand up your wazoo. But any educated adult, especially one with such a long career in journalism, should occasionally try answering some of those questions objectively. But he never does. Instead, he uses his platform to sow doubt and paranoia and false narratives. Well, then, Dan, you know what? Why don't you do what every other politician's doing? You and Bernie, why don't you host the podcast, okay? Do it. I'm seeing all these celebrities, and yes, even these corporate journalists start up their own podcasts. I don't like it that you people, and I mean you people being politicians, and I'm being generous with the word people because politicians are not people. Why don't you go ahead and set up your own podcast? Go ahead. You got to get all three of your best friends to tune in and subscribe. He does this for one simple reason. Clicks and engagement. Well, that's show business, baby. Which, of course, translates to monetary benefit. And wow. With keen-eyed eagles like yourself, no pun intended, probably so. No, man, it's no wonder. It's no wonder Washington, D.C. is running so efficiently, right? He wants you to believe that he is the last place you can go for truth and that he's the only one brave enough to reveal the elitist lies being told. Well, he interviewed Putin. That took balls of steel. You know, he's interviewed so many people across the spectrum. Hell, he was one of the few journalists, one of the people on corporate media to even talk about the freedom of Julian Assange and how ridiculous the war in Ukraine is. You know, that's just thrown out there. This nonsense about Christian mistreatment in Israel is just the latest example. Tucker will eventually fade into nothingness because his veneer of Fox intellectualism is quickly falling apart, revealing who he truly is. A cowardly, know-nothing elitist who is full of shite. Oh, you don't say, Dan. Really? Wow. Of course. Just want to pull this up here. APAC tracker. Oh, man, Dan, you are definitely worth every red cent, aren't you? Dan Crenshaw. Look at this, folks. I wonder why. Why Dan Crenshaw was so triggered and became such an emotional snowflake because, oh, he gets $221,959 received from pro-Israeli lobby groups. That's why Dan Crenshaw had some sand up his butt. That's why Dan Crenshaw got so triggered. That's why Dan Crenshaw just got so upset. But gee, Dan, you seem like a little bit of a hypocrite. I want to pull up a little tweet from Easy Street from February 11th of 2021. The conservative guide to the culture wars in no particular order. America is worthy of love and patriotism. Oh, fuck off. Anyone who talks like that, question them. Victor mentality is better than victim mentality. Well, you got so triggered by this, man. Well, probably because you got paid to be triggered like a little snowflake. All right. Dan Crenshaw is a snowflake. Free speech is absolute. So what? You don't like the fact that Tucker Carlson actually had a very interesting conversation? Look at this. Again, this man is easily triggered. He's a snowflake. 4, it doesn't matter what kind of gun restrict, criminals still hurt people. Let us protect ourselves. You get to keep wealth you create and pass it to your kids. Oh, of course. Hey, you're in on that, Dan, right? You do that insider trading, baby. The government has no right to shut down business or invade your home without due process, even in pandemics. Women should not have to compete against men in women's sports. You okay? Well, see, look at this. Look at this. This guy is so morally triggered. He made this whole list. He doesn't. I'm willing to bet he doesn't even believe in a fraction of what's up here. You can't have freedom without order. Order without law. Law without morality. Morality without religion. Or religion without God. Oprah meet Uma. Uma meet Oprah. Let's see. Innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. Personal responsibility is a virtue. Never give in to cancel culture, but stay humble and apologize when you're wrong. So when the death toll gets to maybe 100K dead Palestinian men, women, and children, will you apologize, Dan? Yeah, probably not. Little boy is upset. To which we did respond to this. You seem angry, bitter, and your fragile world was broken by this interview. It is okay, snowflake, which is what he is. Dan Crenshaw has revealed himself to be a triggered, emotional snowflake. He doesn't have what it takes. He doesn't have what it takes. He is so mad and upset. Now I want to pull up this one here because he's gotten a little bit of pushback. Jeff Carlson says, still mad that you got caught on tape saying that the IC officials who lied to get Biden elected didn't matter because they were retired. What you left out was 5 of those IC officials were former CIA directors. The deep state strikes again. All right, look at this. All these people are so upset. And look. Here is again Dan Crenshaw. Tucker Carlson calling him out here. This, by the way, came out March 15th of 2024. Let's play this.
Access to everything TikTok has, which means data on all Americans, and with data and with access to your app that you're addicted to, you can vastly manipulate an entire population, which the Chinese have done already.
Are you worried that our intelligence agencies are doing the same thing domestically?
Am I worried that I know that they're not?
See, he has a keen eye, an open eye, a clear eye for corruption. No wonder he got triggered by Tucker Carlson. This is a guy who knows how to follow orders once that paycheck comes in.
Not manipulating Americans. They're not controlling the flow of information.
Yeah. Did you have some evidence otherwise that you'd like to share?
I mean,
okay.
Before
that's any serious questions?
So ByteDance were to say.
Congressman, you asked for an example of the U.S. intelligence agencies meddling in our information. What about before the 2020 election when 50 members came out and said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? Does that count?
No, because I mean they were retired.
They were retired, but the FBI had the laptop for over a year.
There's nothing even close to a TikTok.
He's a snowflake. He's an emotional, triggered man-child. And by the way, he's getting dragged all over his little post. You're just a little hoe for Zionist money. You'd rather see American troops die for Israel than grow a spine. America's last war pig sellout says, what? Jake Shields writes, Tucker is a patriot while you are a Zionist cocksucker. You do this for one simple reason, because they pay you. A day of reckoning is coming for you traitors. And of course, give it up For Nick from RBN, you know you're supposed to represent America, not Israel, right? And just a quick reminder, this is the money that pro-Israeli groups gave little triggered snowflake Dan Crenshaw, because he can't handle criticism at all whatsoever. But it's more than that. You got Carolyn Gillick, who says, actually, Tucker's cultivating hatred of Israel and Jews based on lies and innuendos. They've lost the mask. Well said, Anya. Well said indeed. I also want to pull up this little tweet because Anya just dragged him. When his masters say jump, Crenshaw says, how high? This is the money that Dan Crenshaw gets from pro-Israeli groups. Huge people who are paying him money. He wants that money. Look at all this money that he's getting. He is nothing more than a paid corporate politician prostitute. And no disrespect to sex workers out there, but, you know, Dan Crenshaw, he works hard. He twerks hard for that money. And so, of course, he's going to get triggered. Huge shout out to Dave Smith, because there's also a couple other people. You got Laura Loomer. You know, he completely ignores the way Christians have been treated in Iraq and Syria, except for the part where he brought up in the first time. How dare he criticize Israel for killing Christians? We all know that caring about Christians is anti-Semitic. Laura Loomer writes, what a moronic interview by Tucker Carlson. Imagine being so dense that you accuse Israel of being hateful towards Christians while ignoring that what every Muslim country does to Christians. I've just lost a lot of respect for Tucker Carlson. This is truly a moronic interview. These are the same people, Laura Loomer, Dan Crenshaw, all these conservative commentators, Ben Shapiro, the guy who talks really, really fast, super fast. These people are not serious people because, you know, for a long time they were screaming about cancel culture, censorship. You know, they scream about it, but they're not serious. What they do is they hide behind it, and they want to control the narrative. See, this is what I mean. If Republican lawmakers get power, they're going to act exactly the same way as Democratic lawmakers. I want to pull up this short video by a good friend of the show, Nick from RBN. Keep on speaking truth to power, my friend.
Tucker Carlson is finally calling out Israel and the absurd ideology of Christian Zionism. Tucker Carlson called out Israel for their treatment of Christians and carrying out human rights violations on holy land.
If you wake up in the morning and decide that your Christian faith requires you to support a foreign government blowing up churches and killing Christians, I think you've lost the thread.
The fact that Christians was ever okay with their taxpayer money being spent on sending weapons to Zionists so they can kill other Christians was always absolutely crazy to me. We also had Israel, who funded Syrian terrorists who engaged in mass atrocities against Syrian Christians.
Dr. Nick, dude. They're all snowflakes. All of them. Look at Fresh and Fit. Hey, Dr. Nick, you're only gonna get this reference again. See now, if I had an ashtray or some sort of glass to break, then it would, I got to get that video. I'm gonna put that on the keyboard of good old Fit getting upset again because they're all snowflakes. A lot of these red pill people, you know, those red pill gurus, a lot of these people who are quote unquote conservative free speech absolutists, people like Ben Shapiro, Dan Crenshaw, Laura, they're snowflakes. If they're given power, they will exactly act the same way, click, copy, paste, as a neoliberal latte drinking liberal. I said neoliberal and liberal twice, but anyways, you get what I'm saying. It's click, copy, paste the same. These people are not serious people. They are triggered snowflakes, triggered, emotionally stunted snowflakes. Keep on speaking truth to power, Nick.
In the region. So we had Zionist Jews fund radical jihad against Christians in the region, and American evangelicals was okay with it. Not anymore. They are finally waking up. Tucker Carlson even brought on a prominent Palestinian pastor to explain the brutal Israeli treatment of Palestinian Christians and living under the apartheid regime. So how are the Zionists The people who consider themselves allies with America and the evangelical movement, how are they responding to these very legitimate criticisms levied by Christians and people like Tucker Carlson? And they're calling Tucker Carlson an anti-Semite for raising concerns about the amount of Christians.
Yes, look at this. Look at this. All these conservative commentators, all these people who have a platform, maybe with the Daily Wire or on Fox News or part of the Republican establishment, they're emotionally triggered snowflakes. They are not serious freaking people. Now, thankfully, there are some people who are libertarian and Republican who are actually free thinkers and look at this crisis in Gaza and say, holy cow, this is a genocide. Even Trump, and I'm being generous, very generous with this one. Like I'm giving this a 10-foot pole kind of generosity. Even he was saying, hey, look, you guys got to stop what you're doing. You're losing the whole world. You're losing the whole world. And everyone's still seeing that Netanyahu is still ramping up military operations to go into Rafah. Tell me, again, all you emotionally triggered people, Dan Crenshaw, Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro, this interview that Tucker Carlson did, why has it made your butt so hurt? Why is it that you're acting like somebody just stole your favorite toy? Because Tucker Carlson asked people around the world in that interview to maybe, I don't know, controversial statement in 3, 2, 1, look at what's happening in Gaza from a different perspective and point of view, maybe enlighten people. Now, I'm not going to agree with Tucker Carlson with everything that he has said in the past. However, he did a very thought-provoking interview. There I said, I think it was far more better and superior than his interview with Putin. And that was what it was. But that's the whole idea of having a show on the internet, and that is having thought-provoking guests on your show to make people uncomfortable, but also make them think. And which is why I keep on drilling this in my audience's head too. Even after the show, look at different perspectives and points of view. Educate and read for yourselves as well. Because I ask of my audience to be educated on these matters too. Because it's, hey, we do this show every day, but every day you guys walk out there, there's a chance for you to talk to somebody of a different perspective and point of view, to maybe engage in conversation so we can ask ourselves, why are things so messed up as they are?
That Israel murders. Are Americans starting to realize that this is an abusive relationship now? The funniest thing about this story to me is many right-wing influencers like Tucker Carlson was extremely muted about Israel. It wasn't until Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire fired Candace Owens and opened the floodgates. So I want to take this time and thank Ben Shapiro for being such a traitorous piece of shit that you turned off white evangelicals from Zionism.
Yes, driving me Macy. A latte does sound good right about now too. But however, just remember, if you see a bunch of white liberals, keep the distance because they're going to ask you, "Hey, are you going to vote for Biden?" Of course, I want to pull up this article here from RT just to trigger the libs, of course. Washington support for Israel threatens Palestinian Christians. Priest tells U.S. journalist Tucker Carlson. I know. So members of Gaza's small Christian community were among the thousands of civilians killed in the Palestinian enclave as a result of Washington's support for Israel in its war with Hamas. A pastor told Bethlehem from Bethlehem has told journalist Tucker Carlson in an interview posted on X, formerly known as Twitter. I prefer to call it Phoenix, by the former Fox News host on Tuesday. Reverend Munther Isaac of the Evangelical Lutheran Christian Church also criticized Christian leaders in the United States for failing to oppose the destruction in Gaza. And and everything is pretty much covered in that interview that we've played, not only on our show, but on Due Dissidence as well. But what can we take away from this? What can we learn? We can learn that the Republican right, the politicians, and especially those who are in a higher echelon position, as soon as their world vision is challenged, as soon as they are shown as hypocrites and frauds, they become emotional snowflakes like the SJWs on the left, like the neoliberal pundits that we see on BSDNC or CNN. They are all one and the same. Ben Shapiro, he refuses to take criticism about Israel. Dan Crenshaw and other politicians like him, both Democrat and Republican, are paid prostitutes. Paid politicians that are owned advised and counseled by pro-Israeli lobby groups. So of course, Dan Crenshaw is going to act like a snowflake. But yet he posted in 2021 these values for the cancel culture war. He too also engages in cancel culture. Right, Dan? When you build up your own kind of audience, Mr. Representative Crenshaw, if you could build up an audience like Tucker Carlson, then go ahead. But something tells me that you can't, because you're probably waiting for another check from your donors. These politicians and these pundits who scream about cancel culture are not serious people.